Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak to you this afternoon. It's an honour, and I'm very grateful, as are my colleagues, to the Conseil Supérieur for their kind invitation and hospitality. I'd also like to thank the British Council for facilitating this visit, my visit. The British Council, as you know, has been doing excellent work in cultural relations since the end of World War II. And although, like all organisations, it faces its own funding pressures, its work is as important as ever, and we could probably say it's never been more important. So my name is Gary Holden. I'm a school principal in Rochester, an ancient city, town on the banks of the River Medway, rich in Charles Dickens connections, about 50 miles southeast of London. And I'm also an OFSTED inspector, and I'm going to talk a little bit this afternoon about the process of school inspection that currently exists in England. It's not unusual for a head teacher to be also an OFSTED inspector. 70% of OFSTED inspectors are practicing school leaders. So increasingly, the process of inspection in English schools is one of moderated peer review as opposed to external evaluation. So OFSTED stands for the Office of Standards in Education, Children's Services and Skills. That's what the acronym stands for. It was set up in 1992 as a result of the Education Act that was passed at that time to keep the Secretary of State informed about the quality of education in schools, the educational standards that children achieve, the use of financial resources, and the spiritual, moral, social and cultural development of pupils. And although OFSTED reports to the Secretary of State, it is independent of government and is held accountable directly by Parliament. So the role that OFSTED plays in the English education system includes inspecting schools, inspecting teacher training establishments, and also inspecting children's homes, and then reporting on the effectiveness of those institutions. But as well as writing reports on these individual providers, OFSTED has an important role in holding up a mirror to the system. For example, every year Her Majesty's Chief Inspector produces a report to Parliament that identifies trends and patterns arising from that year's inspection activities. Last year, for example, the report identified that students' achievement in the north of England was significantly worse than in the south, and so called for schools, government and policymakers to urgently consider the causes of this and the possible remedies for it. In addition, OFSTED produces summaries of inspection findings around a particular topic or subject. Recent reports have covered the teaching of modern foreign languages and the quality of teaching and curriculum in the first 3 years of secondary school. And periodically, OFSTED will also produce major reports that highlight specific concerns. A significant and influential example was the report that came out in 2013 called Unseen Children, which drew attention to the underachievement of the country's most disadvantaged children. And the report stated that this represents an unacceptable waste of human potential, which incurs huge costs for us all. So from this, we can see that OFSTED does not take a merely technical view of its regulator role. It's driven by strongly held values also. Values concerned with acting as an advocate for young people rather than the schools they attend, and promoting their right to an excellent education. Inspectors are also bound by a strict code of conduct, and providers are encouraged to complain if they feel an inspector's behaviour has fallen short of what is expected. And it has a strong mission to bring about improvement through inspection, to do good as we go. So there's a common framework that guides all inspections, covering those 4 areas of a school or a provider's activity. And the numbers 1 to 4, 1 stands for outstanding, 2 for good, 3 for requires improvement, and 4 for inadequate. Inspectors also make judgments about the arrangements in a school for keeping children safe, including the procedures for appointing teachers. In addition, a judgment is made about the spiritual, moral, and cultural development of children by looking at how well the curriculum develops those attributes, as well as the extracurricular opportunities the school provides. The emphasis on fundamental British values arose from a concern that schools weren't doing enough to help instill a national sense of identity and belonging. Now, it's worth noting that the most recent revisions to the framework for inspections has been well received by the system, but there remain debates and controversies. The grading or not grading of individual lessons was one such controversy. Also controversial has been a sense that inspection judgments might hinge more on the preferences of the individual inspector than on the performance of the school. And Ofsted have responded to this by significantly increasing the proportion of school leaders who join inspection teams and putting in place transparent complaints procedures and no longer grading individual lessons. All this means that inspections are now usually done with rather than to schools. The frequency of inspections depends on how good you are. So outstanding schools are by and large exempt from inspection. Good schools are inspected every 3 years or so. Schools judged to require improvement are re-inspected every 2 years, while inadequate schools get the most intense regime of inspection about every 10 weeks until they no longer need that level of intervention. As a system, we're doing better, we're improving, so over 80% of our schools are now good or better. Ofsted is particularly concerned when it visits a school with the overall performance of the young people in that school, but also with progress of particular groups, for example, higher attainers and lower attainers, those with special educational needs, and those from disadvantaged backgrounds. And again, that focus on the progress of our most disadvantaged pupils is a very strong theme of our inspection regime. When an inspection takes place, 3 key questions frame that inspection. I've put those questions on the slide there. So does the leadership team know what's going on in their school? Have they got a real sense of the strengths and weaknesses of the school? And that includes governors. Is there a credible plan to address those weaknesses? And is there a culture that's sufficiently aspirational and inclusive that motivates and inspires staff and children alike to tackle those weaknesses? And inspectors can come in 2 shapes or sizes: full-time inspectors called Her Majesty's inspectors and Ofsted inspectors, as I said before, around about almost 3/4 of whom are practicing school leaders. The main activities that take place during an inspection are these. So the inspection team will review the attainment and progress of previous and current pupils. They'll have in-depth discussions with the principal. They'll visit classrooms and observe teaching. They'll look at children's work. They'll obtain parents' views. They'll talk to children about their progress. They'll talk to teachers and senior and middle leaders about the impact of their work. And they'll talk to governors about their role in the school, in particular, how they hold school leaders to account. So an inspection then will take this form. It'd be useful to I'll talk to you for a few moments about how an inspection feels from an inspector's point of view and from a school leader's point of view, because I'm both, but not at the same time. Before the inspection takes place, and before the school even knows it's going to be inspected, the inspector will do those activities in grey on the slide. They'll look at published data about the school, which is all publicly available. They'll look at the school's website to make sure that it's compliant with requirements, particularly in relation to communication with parents. And then the day before the inspection takes place, they'll telephone the school to let them know that tomorrow we are coming in to inspect your school, and they'll discuss the inspection. Then the inspector will establish the lines of inquiry that he or she wants to follow with the team and brief the team on that. The size of the team will vary according to the size of the school. Typically, a primary school would have 2 inspectors, whereas a secondary school would have maybe 4 or more. So during the first day of what's normally a 2-day inspection, it starts about 8 o'clock. The team will meet the head teacher, the principal. They'll meet the staff, try to put the staff at their ease and say, we're not trying to catch you out. We're trying to catch you being good and see the best of what you do. Be confident, don't put on a particular show for us. Do what you always do. And then the inspection will unfold. So inspectors will visit classrooms, talk to children, as I explained in a previous slide. There'll be a team meeting towards the end of the first day, around about 4 o'clock on the first day, and the principal is invited to that meeting. So the inspectors sit around a table with the lead inspector and the head teacher of the school, and they'll summarize what they found on that first day. How is it looking? What's the strengths of the school? What are the weaknesses of the school that we have picked up during the course of the day's activities? And then they'll finish that day with some emerging judgments. Well, we think it's beginning to feel as though this school is a good school for these reasons. Or the team might say, we still haven't got enough evidence about the achievements of your disadvantaged pupils, of your higher attainers. So tomorrow we're going to look in a bit more detail at that area. And that's what will happen. So day 2 will be a more focused day, looking at the areas of the school about which there may be questions from day 1. There'll be another team meeting towards the end of day 2, a more summative meeting this time. Again, the head teacher is invited to that meeting and can take part in that meeting. And then finally, a very short final meeting where the lead inspector will feed back to governors and other stakeholders saying, this is the judgment on your school. What follows then is the report will be drafted, written. The school gets the opportunity to check the written report, and then the written report is put on OFSTED's website and on the school's website, and they are all publicly available. Do have a look, ofsted.gov.uk. Have a look at some reports. That's what one looks like. It's written in straightforward, clear language because the audience is parents. The audience is not meant to be educational professionals, so inspectors are not allowed to use acronyms or jargon. It's written in straightforward, everyday language. So the role of Ofsted in the future, we have a very fragmented system right now because we're moving towards what we're calling a school-led system. And Ofsted plays an important role in trying to sort of hold that system together and report impartially on how we are doing by our children. And of course, that's the only reason any of us are there, is to improve the life chances of our young people. And so the future of Ofsted will be, as we move towards schools working together in clusters, Ofsted is increasingly going to work with those clusters of schools, helping them to put in place very strict and impactful peer review and moderate that peer review. So Ofsted's future is likely to be to moderate judgments and assess the robustness of peer review. So the best inspection reports tell the story of the school's journey and provide a picture of what it's like to be a pupil there. The summative reports and surveys, in turn, hold a mirror up to our system, representing those who would otherwise have no voice, and challenge us to do better by them. Shukran, merci.